Good evening. It's Tom Sykes, the Royalist here. Well, good afternoon to those of you in...
wait, Tom, I can't hear you again.
Dearie me.
Tom, I can't hear you.
I think that my microphone is working and they can hear me. So let's just take Paula off the stage for a moment, shall we, Ben? And maybe message Paula on the chat if she is responding. So I'm here with Paula, but right now you're not going to be able to hear Paula because she can't hear me, I think. Anyway, who knows? But Paula, do you want to leave and rejoin, please, is what Ben's saying, if you can get into the chat. But maybe you can't hear me. Anyway, anywho, we are here today to talk about Harry and Meghan in Jordan. Yes, you might have thought that Harry and Meghan had left the royal family. You might have thought that Harry and Meghan were living private lives of privacy and not being involved and having to perform like circus animals for the media. However, you might be confused, therefore, if you saw these photographs of them. So it was announced basically very late last night. It was top secret. Nobody knew about it. About midnight last night, the news was officially announced that Harry and Meghan had landed in Jordan and were in Jordan to visit a refugee camp, which caters for a lot of refugees from Gaza. So it's obviously a very sensitive political situation, very sensitive trip. And I suppose, look, they went to great lengths yesterday to kind of make this point that they were neither pro-Gaza or pro or anti-Palestinian. But I think that those reassurances, they're not really the point. And of course, they want to be apolitical. They're saying, look, we're not interested in the politics of this. We just, we are about humanitarian aid and everybody can get behind that. So their official response, they do these sort of Q&As that they circulate to the media. And they're always phrased, which is funny because it's always the way the royal family do it as well. They're always phrased as a kind of conversation with an imaginary journalist. So the question was, does this mean they are pro-Palestine and anti-Israel? And the team sets out the answer. No, they are pro-family, pro-children, and pro-peace and decency. Their continued humanitarian work has reflected this on a global, non-partisan, non-politicized level. Well, I don't know if A, that will satisfy everyone, and B, I think there's a reason why the British royal family, tend not to insert themselves into highly fractious debates. Although, to be fair, William has visited Gaza, has spoken out about Gaza, and that was quite controversial at the time. What I really wanted to talk about, I know Paula, if we get her back, wanted to talk about Harry looking rather glum in a lot of the videos and a lot of the pictures. What I wanted to talk about was the sense that this is really now, to me, this is a bit of a slap in the face to the king. I think Harry and Meghan being in Jordan, which is a close ally of the United Kingdom, and weirdly they were met by the British ambassador, which I found really strange, because all these things, like if you're being received by the British ambassador, they're there at the request of the World Health Organization, but they're being received by the British ambassador. Now, all these things like being received by the British ambassador, these sort of slightly ceremonial trappings, although again they're being very clear to say that there are no ceremonial elements. They haven't personally met the King of Jordan, who is of course a close friend of William and Catherine. William and Catherine were surprise guests at his wedding earlier last year. But my impression is that this is very confusing for people who for ordinary people watching around the world who are like, well, hang on, are these two still part of the royal family, or are they not part of the royal family? And I think it's also, on paper, right, this is just a private, charitable, awareness-raising trip. But in practice, it just looks like an unofficial royal tour. And I just feel like right at this moment, obviously it was planned a long time in advance, and et cetera, but I don't know. I just feel for them to be doing this is very unhelpful, when really the monarchy really just needs to steady the institution, to really take stock, for everything to be really very carefully. This is the moment, right, where the royal family need everything to be incredibly carefully choreographed, incredibly carefully linked together. And it's a little bit odd for them to be out there freelancing as royals, while the king deals with this incredibly serious crisis of Andrew. I mean, like, literally, officers have only just finished searching Royal Lodge, so that, his earlier official home, where apparently he was a tremendous hoarder. They've been searching that place for 5 days. It's crazy. Oh my God, we've got the wonderful Paula Froelich back. She still can't hear me, I think. No, she can hear me. She can hear me?
No, I can hear you off my earbuds. It's a long story, and we're going to have to get this sorted.
You were very struck by how glum. Paula sent me a message earlier saying, my God, he looks so miserable in every single photo that they've posted to their own account. Tell me a bit about your impression of this tour, Paula.
Well, I thought it was fascinating, because all these photos that they posted to their own Sussex account, Harry looks like he's just glum. He looks miserable. Like, what is going on? This is supposed to be his raison d'etre, these quasi weird royal tours. And yet, he just looks so mad and sad and odd, and I know people are like, well, who's paying for this? Do you know who's paying for it? Jordan. It is a free basic press trip, and I'm not sure that that is the right look to have right now. They're not paying a cent for this. We don't know if they've given any money. Archwell is down. The last time we saw Archwell giving to stuff was they gave $50,000 to a woman who was very anti-Israel, and I just think it's weird.
I totally get it. It does look really odd, doesn't it? That he doesn't seem like, because the thing about Harry that I would say in Harry's defense, right, is that when Harry was an official royal and when he was doing these jobs, the one thing he managed to bring to it was the sense that he was really, really happy to be there, and that this wasn't just business as usual. And like, I've told the story before, I might have told it to you, I don't know, but I'll tell it again because I think it's instructive. So a friend of mine who's quite a famous actor was going on a trip to, I think it was like Chester Zoo in England, which is this kind of famous zoo in England. And you get there on the train from London, and he gets on the train and they go into the carriage with all the kids who are going to the zoo. And he gets into the carriage and they are like, as he put it, my friend put it, they're like highly, highly disabled children. And my friend basically said that he had a panic attack. He just couldn't cope with it at all, found it really hard to cope with, and was completely overwhelmed, very emotional, and he said that the effect that Harry had was so amazing. He said that Harry went around this room at this train carriage and sat down and talked to all these kids. Like, oh yeah, mate, what's the matter with you? MS, right? Oh, bloody hell. Do you know what I mean? And totally cut through. And they took this train ride. It was like a 2.5-hour train ride, and he just went round and talked to everybody. And he said that by the end, honestly, the atmosphere on that train was amazing. They had this amazing day at the zoo, and he was just like, you know, he's not. I don't know how he got involved in it or what have you. I can't remember the details, but it really strikes me that we've really lost that Harry. And when we saw Harry in London last year at the Well Child Awards, there was like a very concerted effort to try and portray that Harry again, happy Harry, happy-go-lucky Harry. But you're right. I mean, here he just looks like he looks so miserable. He looks so scowling. And Meghan, of course, absolutely delighted.
Oh,
and, you know, anyone who's read Tom Bower's book about Meghan will know about the unbelievable lengths that she went to kind of get associated with charities and the whole drama with, you know, UN Vision and then UN Women, and then when she was on the tour withdrawing from that market in Fiji because UN Women were involved and UN Women had slighted her before. And, you know, Meghan always understood that the golden ticket in the sort of Hollywood reputation game is to marry a really great philanthropic cause with a really good career, like the sort of George Lamal Clooney model, you know, would be the obvious of it. And you can see that Meghan is delighted to be here. She is delighted. I mean, like, say what you want about Meghan, she is bloody happy to be there, and that is a big genuine smile on her face. Like, she is over the bloody moon at what is going on. And Harry, I agree. He looks like the plus one who's being dragged along. I mean, it's such an extraordinary version of the way that the royal relationship is supposed to work between a husband and a wife.
Well, and it's funny because we're getting some comments that are basically saying, so who invited them? And of course, they were invited by the Jordanian royals.
They were invited by the World Health Organization.
And the Jordanian royals. Technically, it was the WHO. However, you know, nothing happens without the Jordanian royals. And we all know who's paying for it because they went 5-star, everything is done. I mean, of course, Meghan is looking for another entree into this world. They're trying to shore up their half in, half out by saying, you know what? We can do this while you guys are cleaning up the mess at home. Look at us. We're spreading goodwill. But it's also very dicey because it's taking on Gaza, Israel. Yes, it's about the children. The World Health Organization also had some issues with their doctors in Gaza. We'll not get into that. However, they are trying to prove that once again, their half in, half out totally works, except it doesn't. And I think you're right. Charles does look a little out of control. Like he has no control of this situation. He has no say. And William is seething.
Yeah. And, you know, who can blame him, frankly, because at this stage, it's, you know, it's a really difficult situation, right? If you've got people who, you know, are on one hand saying that the royal family are awful, they want nothing to do with them, that they're racist, that they're ghastly, that they abuse them mentally, that they sacrifice them in service of their own goals. And at the same time, don't actually appear in any way willing to renounce those names or those titles and are indeed actively trading on them. And I think I just feel that, you know, look, I've reported a lot on my Substack about William's plan to take away the titles when he becomes king and to take away the titles, particularly from the children, from Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, because obviously he does not want to bequeath that to his own children, have this whole awful cycle. Literally, it's literally been a cycle because you've got the whole Princess Margaret thing with the Queen, which was, you know, we now think of Princess Margaret quite fondly, but it was a massive problem.
Oh, she was a mess.
Yeah, she was a mess. She was having an affair with the king's equerry. She wanted to marry him. Like, you know, it was a massive problem, the spare in that monarchy. We're now seeing it playing out in real time in the spare Andrew obviously Charles's spare playing out in real time. We're seeing the Harry playing out as William's spare in real time. And at some point, somebody has to say enough. Somebody has to say we have to stop this. How do we stop this happening again? And my understanding is that William is very, very determined to make sure that this crazy inbuilt sort of cycle whereby you take these people and you lavish attention on them, you lavish all this deference, and your breakfast is brought to you under a silver cloche from the age of 5. And then suddenly when you're 25, you're told, actually, you're surplus to requirements. We don't really need you. You're going to be, if any blame has to be put on anyone, it's going to be put on you. Clear off. Oh, and by the way, you're not getting any money, but keep your nose clean. And it's an institutional failure as well. It's not to excuse the way that Harry's behaved, but and if he's ready to leave the institution, it just seems crazy to me that they didn't take the titles away fully when it was done.
Well, I also have a question about that. So William is saying he wants a smaller monarchy and he wants to do away with a bunch of people's titles. So does that mean that Louis and Charlotte are going to not be prince and princess as well? Does that mean that they're not going to have any royal stylings until they're 18, whether they decide they want to work for the firm or not?
As I understand it, basically, yes. I think that is all obviously really up in the air. And I think that the whole problem with this, right, throughout, the whole problem is that the king has consistently always treated the king, while bitterly complaining about the role of their own sibling, then treats their own children differently. It says, well, clear off Andrew, clear off Harry, but actually it's going to be different for my kids. And I think that's going to be the big secret weapon, really, that William will bring to this. And I have reported actually on my Substack that there's no doubt that George is going to be king, right? He is considered up for it and up to it, and there's absolutely no doubt about that. But I have reported that Charlotte and Louis, the titles are not being used informally in the house or by servants or at school or anything like that. They are used when they very rarely do a public appearance or a social media thing. They are used. But I'm told that realistically, under Prince William, it's going to be, if you're a working royal, you get an HRH and a title. And if you're not a working royal, you don't get an HRH and a title. And I think that's kind of the advantage of being really sensible and fair. Do you know what I mean? It makes sense.
Right. But the issue is, who knows what they want to do when they're 18? Can you go back and forth? I want the apartment and the title. Wait, no, I don't. And I know that I've also reported that William wants a European monarchy where basically it's just the eldest, that's it. But who's going to iron all their underwear?
Well, in answer to your first question, what I'm told is that, and what was definitely agreed for William in terms of stepping up to public duties, was it's more like 25, but it's a movable feast depending on the individual. And certainly if you look at the age of William now is 47 now, who could easily live till he's 90, right? There's no significant pressure. He could easily live till he's 100, let's be honest, with advances in medical science. So there's no great pressure on George really to do anything before he's about 30, or the other kids indeed, to make any big decisions before they're about 25 or 30. So I think there's the advantage that they have is there's loads of time for this to play out. We've seen this kind of massive effort to raise the kids as normal kids, to raise them within somewhat as far as possible, to have a kind of normal upbringing, to be raised by their parents rather than be raised by nannies. And I am told that a big part of that is that they are never referred to as Prince or Your Royal Highness or anything like that, which Charles and Andrew were constantly from the age of birth onwards.
But the other thing is, so if they're not going to have to decide until they're 25, right? What do? They go to college, they go to the military. What if they do other stuff? If they pull a Harry and go out and have a wild time, and then they decide they want to be royal. However, before that, before 25, 18 to 25, at least I know I got into a little bit of trouble. Thank God there was no social media. But do does that preclude them from ever joining the royals? It's also confusing to me. You know what's not confusing is that I don't think Harry, Meghan, Archie, Lily should have titles. At this point, it's just too much of a red herring. And also, frankly, it could cause a lot of traumas. Blah. Here's the deal. Kids in LA of great privilege, I cannot speak today, they have a real issue. A lot of them don't turn out so great. So if they're going to be prince and princess, even though they've never really visited England or know the family, I'm confused.
Yeah, well, exactly, and I think you're right that the reality is whatever happens with their own kids, and obviously there's going to have to be discussion about that as they grow up, as we see their characters. I mean, I think, you know, if I had to put money on it, I'd say now that Charlotte looks pretty much, you know, up for duty and that, and Louis looks pretty much like he's not going to be up for that. But I mean, hey, who knows? Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, kids can surprise us. But I think what you're absolutely right about is that it's just so unbelievably, blindingly obvious that when King George V in 1917 introduced the letters patent, which said the grandchildren of the serving monarch are entitled to be a prince and princess and to be HRH. He obviously did not have in mind two people, children, living in a republic, living overseas, who were the children of two people who'd done a great deal of harm to the monarchy and expended a great deal of energy trying to damage the monarchy. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. And Harry and Meghan were very, very clever. They bounced the monarchy, you know, at a moment of weakness. 6 months after the Queen died, they basically announced to People magazine, Princess Lilibet has been christened, and Prince Archie was there, and kind of bounced the palace into it because it had never been talked about, had never been agreed in like typical fashion, and it should have been hammered out at the Sanctum Summit. It obviously should have been. And you know, to be honest, Harry and Meghan, they have the letter of the law on their side. I mean, the law is that the letters patent of 1917 are that if your grandfather's the monarch, you are an HRH, you are a prince, you are a princess. But it's so obvious that that's not in the spirit of what was intended by those letters patent. I don't think anyone's going to have a problem if new ones are issued changing that. That's my personal opinion.
Well, I mean, it was issued over 100 years ago when the world was very, very different. So I don't understand why King Charles is not kind of taking the bull by the horns and saying, all right, let's nip it in the bud.
Well, I think the psychological explanation for that is that, you know, what he's always said, you know, in his interview with Jonathan Dimbleby, he famously went on and on about how he was bullied at school and he was made way to wear corduroys to his friends' parties when his friends got to wear jeans, and that he had this ghastly, lonely life, and that his parents laughed whenever he performed in the school play. I mean, it is I was reading an account of that interview the other day with Jonathan Dimbleby, and I must have watched it at the time, but I am actually going to watch it again because I think it does explain a lot, you know. And if you, I don't know, like I know one person in particular who was bullied by their father, and they turned into a real asshole, a real bloody asshole, and were horrible to their family and everything. But I understand that other people who get bullied as children, you know, can go. Obviously, loads of people who we've all get bullied a bit at school, right, or what have you, and loads of us who have or haven't been bullied go on to have perfectly sensible boundaries and relationships and manage their kids perfectly. But I do think that some people who feel very, very bullied and carry that trauma with them can really overcompensate with their own children. And I think that's what we've seen with Charles over and over again. It's just this absolute terror of crossing Harry, really. I mean, it's extraordinary. It's like he is afraid of his own son. It's crazy.
I agree with you 100% on that. The issue for me is that Charles has given his entire life to service, to the firm, to the monarchy, and now it's under real attack from within the family. Not just Andrew, but also Harry, who is so headstrong and refuses to actually listen to anyone but Meghan.
And I think it gives us this little trip to Jordan. I think it gives us a very, very interesting insight into why William is so opposed to Harry getting his security back, and why, to be fair, Charles's private secretary, Clive Alderton, was always also very opposed to it, and kind of, in a way, took much of that decision out of Charles' hand. Alderton is the royal family's representative on Ravec, which is the board that decides. And the rumor is that he was very much in the party of, like, he's not in the cohort anymore. He doesn't live in the country. And security should be taken away, because he knew that was an effective way to keep him out of the country. Because the reality is, it's one thing for Harry to be doing this in Jordan, but if he's doing this in East London while William's in West London, I mean, that is a massive, massive headache for the royal family, for William, for the media, for everybody. I mean, it's obviously an amazing story for the media, for this battle of the brothers to be played out again in front of us. You know, the resentment that Harry and William have for each other is obviously such a compelling story. But, like, it's far from ideal for the family who's trying to recover from this horrendous crisis with Andrew. Has got to really choreograph very, very tightly what it does, so that there's no room for misinterpretation.
Well, I'd like to bring up 2 points. The first point is Harry's camp made it very clear that they had notified Buckingham Palace of this trip. My question is, when did they notify them? 24 hours before? And the other thing is, does Harry actually have security yet? Again, we don't know.
We don't know.
But where else is he going to go this year? Now, this trip is much more appropriate than, say, Colombia or Nigeria. But where else are you going to show up?
My suspicion is that this is a sign that perhaps he has got the security back. I hasten to add, I don't know. And I find it surprising if he has got it back that his side haven't leaked it yet, because, as you say, Paula, they are the leaky teapot. So it is odd. But there's just part of me that thinks that this could be part one of a multi-part act that could be predicated upon them having free security. Because, you see, if they don't have security, it's unbelievably expensive to do stuff like this. Now, it looks to me from the photographs, without going into too much detail, it looks to me like the security is being provided locally. But and potentially, that not necessarily, but potentially, that means that they have regained the status of international protected person, which they let slip that they had when they left the royal family. On an early statement they put out that asked about their security, they said, "We are internationally protected people." That was then quickly removed, because then obviously not allowed to talk about the security. Now it's unclear at this stage, and I find it against my hunch that maybe something has happened. Against that is the fact that they haven't leaked it or they haven't briefed it, which I would have thought it would be such a massive success for Harry that he'd be running up the hill waving that flag. So
100%. But also, look at the security they have now that Jordan has given to them. It's the same security that Nigeria gave to them, Colombia gave to them, and it looks as if nothing has changed so far. Now, somebody in
Well,
the
actually, they
comments
took
just
their
said,
own people to Nigeria and Colombia, and I don't see their own people here. But I don't want to speculate about it too much because, like, we will
Nigeria,
find.
they had state security. There's no way that
Yes,
they
they
would
did.
have gotten
They did.
away
But they had
with
their own people as
two
well.
people.
They had their own people as well. But all I want to say, when we will actually know whether they've got the security back, is the next time Harry visits the UK. If he doesn't visit until the Invictus Games, which is in June or July, the 1 year to go of the Invictus Games, then I think we conclude that he hasn't got the security back. If he comes prior to that, I think we will know that he's got the security back, A, because he can afford to do it, and B, because he'll be being escorted down the street by police cars with their sirens going. So,
well, and also he'll have Meghan with him because he's always said Meghan and the kids can't come because of this. If we see Meghan back in England, we know why.
absolutely. Never a true word spoken. Well, look, it's great to be here. 7:30, we've got to go. Thank you very much, everybody. Like and subscribe. Follow Paula on her amazing Substack, The Inside Scoop with Paula Froelich. Follow Paula on her YouTube channel, which is there in the description for you all to enjoy. Me and Paula have got a secret project tomorrow, so we might not be on air tomorrow, right, Paula? For the secret
We
thing.
do.
Yeah.
And by the way, hopefully tomorrow we're going to get my audio issues fixed because I'm hearing myself twice. So I am kind of coming off a little slurry.
We love you, Paula. Thanks very much, everybody, for being with us. Thank you, Ben. Good night.